Hello, and welcome back to the All Out Soccer podcast. Slightly different with a new intro. Myself, Jeremy Goldstein, and my co-host, Joseph McBride, we're two football fans, and we're talking about soccer. We focus on a fusion of the MLS, the U.S. men's and women's national teams, and the build-up to the 2026 World Cup. Joe, guten Tag, how we doing? Adding one more, como se yo? Son obviously scored a beautiful free kick. How you doing?
I'm good. Currently north of the border. Watched a thrilling scoreless draw between Toronto and Atlanta yesterday. But other than that, all good. How are you?
I'm good. Obviously fresh off watching a very bizarre game between Liverpool and Newcastle where Liverpool came out victors. But busy week of soccer. And I'm enjoying it being the last few weeks of soccer as the primary focus in the United States, kind of before the attention shifts to the NFL. It's kind of nice. I much enjoy my weekends when they're predicated on MLS, Premier League, whatnot, before just like, oh, it's the NFL taking over. If you're enjoying the show, please leave us a like, especially on YouTube. Okay, what happened? There was a Son Heung-min free kick for Los Angeles FC as the new star scored brilliantly, perhaps showing Tottenham what they were missing all these years. It was Muller mania for Vancouver as the lanky German scored by a penalty past the 100th minute to secure a victory in a wild game versus St. Louis FC, aka MLS's Little Germany. Seattle's attack continues to run riot with a 5-star performance against Sporting Kansas City. Philly scores 4 to stay top of the table. And what do we have for you today? We have a quick MLS roundup. We're not going to talk about Messi in Miami. Not too interesting this week, though there was a banger in that game. I don't know if you caught that one. We have our usual U.S. men's national team roundup. It's very striker heavy. We have a little Canada wrap up, comparing Canada to Team USA. And the general pod is just 15 to 20 minutes this week because the second half, we're going to focus on my interview with U.S. men's national team defender and former Premier League captain DeMerit. He weighs in on the MLS, Americans coming to the Premier League from the MLS, and a whole lot more. Joe, we're going to start in Los Angeles. Very quickly into this game. Son Heung-min, going by Sonny on the MLS broadcasts, I would say finally announced his arrival in the MLS.
It was incredible. I mean, he got an assist right at the end of the game last week. This time, 6 minutes in, free kick, 25 yards out, puts it top shelf, top left. Absolutely unbelievable free kick. It's not just Lionel Messi that can make these magic moments. Now Son is here. And it was just an incredible goal, an incredible way to open his account in MLS. Unfortunately for them, they didn't get 3 points. Logan Farrington equalised for FC Dallas just 6 minutes later. And really, that's how the game ended. I mean, LAFC completely dominated the game, had way more of the ball. They had 20 shots to their 10. They had 11 corners, but just couldn't make it count. It was a shame. Sonny was obviously happy to open his account, but he said at the end of the game that he was disappointed not to get the 3 points. And I mean, his attitude and his willingness to win just shows, how important and how impactful he's going to be for this team. They've already got stars like Benny Bouanga, who you think is rightfully one of the best players in MLS. And he's got another incredible winger to add there. But what's funny is that the free kick has actually caused a bit of a stir in the soccer world. I mean, he was a legend at Tottenham, will always be. He scored 173 goals across 454 games, but he never took free kicks. And the question is, especially after this weekend, why? I mean, he scored 1 free kick goal for Tottenham in his whole time there because Harry Kane was a designated free kick taker who himself scored just twice from a dead ball situation from outside the box. Obviously, penalties was a different story, but Son scored 6 free kick goals for career, which is their leader for the national team. And it looks like he's going to be on free kicks, forever now in LAFC after that wonderful goal. But the question is, why didn't he do that in Tottenham? And because that's not really what you associate Son with, it's more his attacking intelligence, his speed, even his playmaking. Have LAFC just signed an even better player than they first thought if he has that in his locker?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting point. Because what else would Son's role be in a free kick? You don't really want him on the end of a cross either. He's not really the tallest guy. I'm all for putting your best player on the ball, especially when it's someone who's really emboldened to make a play. Son Heung-min obviously comes into the league with a lot of pedigree, a lot of honor. And I think there's no shame in just being like, I'm arguably the best player on the pitch. I'm going to slot this ball in the back of the net wherever I line up. And that confidence kind of radiates off of him. I remember when Zlatan came to the MLS and it was, on and off free kick taker throughout his career, but it was unquestioned with the Galaxy that he would be the free kick taker. And I have no problem with the star stepping up to the spotlight, taking free kicks.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Zlatan, I think, goes under the radar still as one of the best strikers of all time, let alone one of the best players that's been in MLS. I remember his free kicks at AC Milan kind of went off the ball when he went to Manchester United and PSG, got taken off those, understandably so. But yeah, I just think Son, he already had this much excitement, and to step up and have the coldness to do something like that is just, I think he's going to be incredible, and I can't wait to keep watching him.
Yeah, and he's continuing to line up through the middle for LAFC. Do you think this is the right place for Son, or do you think he's maybe better off on the wing? Where do you see him fitting in?
I think he has lost a little bit of pace. So I think lining up centrally is perhaps better. The fact that they can stretch them with Wenger on one side, and they've got young players coming through, really like Martinez, who I think will be a player for them for years to come. But they got, fast players in attack. Him going in the middle, I think with that intelligence he has, is going to be beneficial. And I mean, doesn't even need to be in the box if he can score from 25 yards.
Yeah, and again, LAFC is still very much kind of this counter press transitional side, kind of getting as many of these like small forwards alongside him, Buanga, Martinez, as many of them on the pitch. Obviously, if you played Son on the wing, then you maybe kind of have to change the way you line up. It would be Obobisi through the middle. I totally agree. I think I have no problem with Son through the middle and totally leaning into this kind of counter pressing side. There was another big player who had his breakthrough moment in the MLS this weekend also, and that's Thomas Muller for the Vancouver Whitecaps. What happened? How did we get there? I'm going to bury the lead here a little bit. Muller started in the hole underneath striker Brian White for Vancouver in their match against St. Louis FC. Surrounded, Manuel Sabi was on the right. Jaden Nelson was on the left. Edvard Lewin scored a header for St. Louis, the German, in the 14th minute on a perfect ball in. Brian White controversially was awarded, Vancouver was awarded a penalty controversially right before half that Brian White slotted in, showing that he is the first choice penalty taker. Brian White did leave in the second half via substitution. João Klaus, very underrated striker for St. Louis, scored a beautiful goal in transition in the 73rd minute, completely did the Vancouver defense by himself to give St. Louis a 2-1 lead. Then it was a set piece. Sebastian Berhalter to Rios, equalizer close to the 80th minute. Looked like we were headed for a 2-2 stalemate. Laborda it looked like he tripped himself, the Vancouver left back, but it turns out he was just clipped enough for a very controversial penalty to be awarded in the 101st minute that Thomas Muller, who is now the second choice penalty taker with Brian White on the bench, slotted home, gave a signature fist pump. And that was the win. It came at the end of an absolutely dominant performance for Vancouver. They outshot their opponents 22-11, accumulated 4.5 XG, which is unbelievable. I don't even think Muller played that well. I don't know, Joe, if you watched this game in full, but it was a little sloppy. He didn't complete every passes. He was trying things. I mean, it was his first start in the MLS, his first start with new players. He's only played for one club team his entire professional career. I just think some of the dinky passes and how he was slotting underneath White and whatnot, it's going to take some time. Obviously, Jaden Nelson, the left winger, who I've compared to Jeremy Doku numerous times, is kind of cut from the same cloth as many of the wingers he's played with at Bayern Munich, particularly Kingsley Coman, and I think Muller will work well with him. I'm excited to see how this looks long-term, and I think it's just so cool to have Thomas Muller in this team. I think he's going to make them really, really good.
Yeah, Thomas Muller is one of my favorite players of all time. I said that last week. And to have someone of his pedigree, just an absolute legend in the league. And this is an exciting time. I think he can really, really help Vancouver step up to that next level. Even if it's not, you say he didn't play great, but just having that kind of leader in the dressing room, having that man on the pitch that can create those special moments. Vancouver are an amazing roster, an amazing squad. I've said before, as much as they have stars, they maybe don't have until now that one real bright talent. So I think maybe in games where it's tight, especially going into the playoffs, etc., he can really be a difference maker, which is someone that they really need.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing here, and as a game like this, Thomas Muller can unlock a low block defense because of those kind of intricate passes in the final third that I just don't think any other player in the MLS can do in that sort of way, who's played in those games, who's played against these elite European low block sides that Muller's come up against in the Champions League and the Bundesliga for decades and decades and decades. He's faced the best coaches in the world. And I really think he's going to be the difference for Vancouver going forward. He's also a bit of a silly goose. He always has been. Thomas Muller is one of the most funniest players in the world. After the game, he was asked about his teammate Tristan Blackman, who we've nominated as one of the best center backs in the MLS this season. He said, quote, during the international break, we're going to miss some of the guys. I know Tristan is nominated for the USA. We quickly realized this was not public information. Backtracked, said he could be nominated for the USA, and kind of got him in a little bit of hot water because this is not something that's customarily leaked. Obviously, right now with Pochettino and the World Cup year, everything is very tight-lipped, and but Tristan Blackman, I think, is an interesting player. I think he's someone who could obviously the Whitecaps have the second best defense in the league this year. I think he's someone who certainly could play for the USA. He's also eligible to play for Canada. Apparently, Jesse Marsh has been in contact with the Team Canada coach with Blackman. Their center back, Alistair Johnson, I believe, recently suffered an injury with Celtic, and he's been a regular starter for them for a number of years. Blackman is born and raised in Los Angeles, so that could tilt the scales in their favor. Joe, what's your reaction both to Muller, the weirdo, Muller, the personality, Muller, which I think will be great for the MLS, and then Tristan Blackman, I guess now is an option for the USA. So I think this is big news.
It's massive news. And I mean, just Muller's slip up straight away, the way he played it off and kind of made a whole song and dance about it, just shows the kind of guy he is. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that in press conferences, and I'm excited for it. I don't know if Blackman would have wanted it to be leaked that way, but at the same time, Muller leaking the news and it going viral, a lot of people are going to be hearing about it more than they perhaps would have done. So I guess that's a win. But obviously these are only friendly games, I believe, so I wouldn't lock him down long term. But if he gets in that squad, gets familiar with the coaching staff, the players, and likes the feel of it, and obviously he said he was born in America, he probably will go there. So it's a tug of war, is whether he, goes where he's playing domestically at the moment in Canada or links up with his boys. But I mean, whoever gets him is going to be certainly fortunate for the future. I think he's a really, really good player, got a bright future ahead of him. So just depends if it's Jesse Marsh that can rope him into the team or whether he's going to lose that one. But I think it'd be quite difficult to convert him to Canadian, to be honest. Yeah,
and Christian Blackman has an absolute cannon on his right foot too, I must say. Really has a rocket. Just to quickly name some U.S. men's national team center backs to be competing against. In Europe, it's Chris Richards at Palace. We think he's locked on. After that, it's anyone's guess. Mark McKenzie at Toulouse is off to a good start this season. Cameron Carter-Vickers at Celtic. Banks, the young center back at Augsburg. And then domestically in the MLS, the ageless wonder Tim Ream with Charlotte. Miles Robinson at Cincinnati. Walker Zimmerman, who's a big part of the 2022 U.S. team at Nashville. Those are some of the names he's competing against. I think Blackman deserves a shot.
And that is the one thing to consider also. I think right now, the Canadian defense is much weaker than the US, which we'll get into later. So I think he'd be more guaranteed starts and minutes now. But I think long term for the US, he could definitely step into that role with some older guys going out. And if he could form a partnership with Chris Richards, that could be really exciting.
Hey, if you want to get in the conversation, shoot us an email at alloutfootball@reachplc.com. Please engage by subscribing to the show wherever you get your podcasts. That's the end of part 1 of this week's All Out Soccer. But stick around for part 2 after this break. And we're back. We're moving news around just after this, just to see. It was transfer deadline day in the MLS. Nothing marquee, nothing earth-shattering, but we did get some smatterings of news. Joe, do you have any highlights for us?
Yeah, well, the main one in MLS is the return of Brenner to FC Cincinnati, which I think is really exciting. Highly rated forward who moved on to Udinese in Serie A back in 2023 for $10 million, and they signed him on a 5-year contract. But unfortunately for him, he had an injury at the start, and it hasn't really worked out. So he's joined Cincinnati back on loan until the end of the season with an option to buy, should they so see fit. So that's exciting to have him back and strengthens Cincinnati's team even more heading into the playoffs with an already performing team. Him and Kevin Denke will be able to share the forward line. Moving away from MLS, and Giovanni Reina has finally left Borussia Dortmund. Parma came in strong for him, and they were in advanced talks about a week ago. But Borussia Mönchengladbach, also in the Bundesliga, came in with a late offer, and he decided it was best for him to stay in Germany. Obviously, a big year for him ahead of the World Cup, been very out of favour. But if he can refine form at Mönchengladbach, then it could be massive for him and the USA, of course. There's a record-breaking transfer, although it's in the women's game. Lisbeth Oval is now the most expensive women's player of all time. She joined the Orlando Pride in the NWSL for $1.5 million. She's only 25. She made her debut for Tigres at age 17. She's won 6 Liga MX titles with them, over 50 appearances for the national team already. Very exciting stuff. And although it's not directly a transfer, it definitely is involved with transfers. St. Louis City FC have parted ways with their first ever sporting director, Lutz Pfannenstiel. They had a record-breaking debut season when they expanded into the MLS. They're about to be overtaken by San Diego this year, but last year they missed out on the playoffs, and currently they're sat 14th with 7 games to go. It's been dark times for the little Germany, as you said, but he is now out.
Yeah, it's a shame. St. Louis. I was very big on them coming into the season. I thought they would be contenders in the West, and before they sacked their coach early in the year, Olaf Melberg, they were one of the most just dormant sides. They've definitely sprung to life recently in the goal scoring department, but obviously with the new manager, the interim coach, they have been a little leaky at the back. So a little tough to see. All right, we're going to turn our attention just quickly to our domestic things, not league-wise, but player-wise. We've had some really exciting U.S. national team players to start the 2025-26 league campaign. And I think most excitingly at the striker position, particularly in the championship. And this doesn't even include Haji Wright, not Haji Wright, Patrick Agyemang transferred from Charlotte to Derby and hasn't played yet through injury. But Haji Wright has. Josh Sargent, who was supposed to leave, he's off to a blinding start. I think the championship is where it's at right now for striking talent and Team USA.
Absolutely. And there's some exciting news in Agyemang. Apparently he's nearing a return as well. He's been back in training, so he should be on that forward line of Derby County soon, making his debut, which is great news for him. But yeah, Josh Sargent, inevitable. That's what we're going to call him now. He scored again at the weekend. Unfortunately for them, it was a 2-1 defeat at home to Middlesbrough, Norwich City, that is, of course. But 4 goals in 4 games for Josh Sargent. Unbelievable start to the season. And yes, it is the second division in England, but the Championship is a really difficult league. It's so physical. So for him to still be firing, even if they're playing well, playing not well, really, really good sign and versatility for him and the US national team. Haji Wright, again. Coventry City are a team of goals this year. I mean, 5-3 he scored in a win over Derby County recently. They just beat QPR 7-1 and he scored a brace in that game. So really, really bright start for him. Also some exciting news elsewhere in the English leagues. Although Charlton lost 1-0 to Leicester City, Charlie Kellman came off the bench. He's getting some regular minutes for them. And Damian Downs came off the bench for Southampton, who also lost 2-1 at the weekend to Stoke City. But a really good sign for the striker position. They get a lot of minutes, these guys, and goals, certainly for Haji Wright and Josh Sargent.
Yeah, let's call those guys the big 5, those 5 guys we mentioned. Let's hope they can hit. I'm hoping they can hit 50 goals this season, the 5 of them. Is that a crazy target?
It's ambitious. If they do, they'll definitely be in the squad.
Yeah, well, no, I'm saying the 5 players cumulatively, but not all 5 are going to make the squad.
No, I think that's a stretch, but Josh Sargent at this rate, he's going to be scoring, 46 goals. So
yes, he has to make the team. I'm going to look at some injured players who returned for the U.S. men's national team. I'll start at the striker position. It's Florian Balogun at Monaco. 2 years ago, we were having this conversation. He is atop the U.S. men's national team striker depth chart without much of a thought, considering his performance for Team USA in 2023 after he confirmed his eligibility for the team. He started for Monaco in a 1-0 road loss to Lille, a game where Olivier Giroud was the big story for Lille, the winners that side. Balogun played the whole game. He only had 1 shot. He's a few years removed from that 21 goal breakthrough season he had at Reims, the club in France, where he was on loan from Arsenal a few years ago. He has 11 in the 2 years since, and he plays in a Monaco side that's really full of all of these really interesting young playmakers. And then Takumi Minamino, a little older. And he just hasn't established himself. I think Monaco would be a much bigger team in Europe if they had this breakthrough striker, and they did. They signed Mike Bayrith earlier this year, who scored double-digit goals in half a season. I am worried about Balogun's playing time this season, and I think it would be wise for him to find a move in January. And he took advantage of getting the start today and didn't take advantage. Yeah, he didn't play well. So that's just one to be concerned about. Another striker is Ricardo Pepi, who came off the bench for PSV in their 4-2 win over Groningen, his former side. Pepi missed the last few weeks with injury. He looked to be the locked-on starter this year after PSV sold Luuk de Jong to Porto. Did do anything. I mean, he came on late. He only got a handful of minutes. Former New England Revolution prospect Esmir Bajraktarevic at the Bosnian International was the headline. He scored 2 goals. But Pepi, so he didn't get off to the flying start that he did last year, where he had like double-digit goals by December, despite being a bench option. PSV has signed Alisson Plea from Gladbach, who scored goals for 100 million years. And they just signed Paul Paul Warner, a former Bayern Munich wonderkid, for 15 million. That's another striker. They also signed Dennis Mann from Parma for about 8 or 9 million euros. Even Perisic lined up through the middle at the start for this game. A lot of options. And look, for Pepe, just play him in the Eredivisie and he's going to score goals. But if he doesn't play, he's not going to score. You really wanted him to get off to a good start, but right now for me, if he's not playing, he's behind these championship players we just named. And then quickly jumping back to England, we're going to talk about Anthony Robinson. In my opinion, the best current player for the US men's national team outside of Christian Pulisic. He missed the opening weekend of the Premier League through injury, but he came on for Ryan Sessegnon in the 60th. I don't know why I said that in a French accent. That is an Englishman. In the 62nd minute. Played in a few crosses, a customary game. Fulham 1-1 draw with Manchester United. I thought he defended well down the flank, though he didn't have much to do at the end of that game as kind of United tailed off. He had 10 assists last year in the Premier League. I thought he was amazing, outstanding. Fulham made no real upgrades, so he's kind of once again, outside of Alex Iwobi, kind of the key creator for this Fulham side, which is really cool. He's a key creator. I would say he's the second most important creative player on a top 10 Premier League team as a fullback. That's really cool. That's really important. Is he the best left back in North America? It's a different question. You might disagree. You might point at your good friend, Alphonso Davies. Some Canada players stole the headlines this weekend. Joe, you're in Canada. Tejan Buchanan, hat trick. Jonathan David, goal for Juventus. My question for you right now, just looking at the talent, who has a better pool to pick from? Is it Mauricio Pochettino with the US or Jesse Marsch and Canada?
It's a tough one because I think like Jonathan David starting for Juventus is a big thing. Like the US doesn't have a striker like that right now. Alphonso Davies is obviously a great player when he can stay fit, which is the main big concern. Ishmael Kone is a really capable midfielder. Buchanan, is nice to see him hitting some form. They got some really, really good players, but I actually think in terms of more a pool and maybe as a balanced team, I think the US is more talented, more balanced, and has the opportunity to maybe go further in a tournament. I think as you look at individual stars, obviously you've got Pulisic for the US, and there's so many good players that are nearing that level where they break through to kind of the next step. I think Canada has individually, like as I said, Joe David, Alphonso Davies, a few of those players, maybe a few more of those stars, but as a collective, I think the US is a stronger team.
I would agree. I think pound for pound in the top level talent, I think it's very, very comparable in terms of if you compare David, Pulisic, Davies, Robinson, kind of the names like that. Mm-hmm. And Canada, I think, has some really underrated defenders. Derek Cornelius playing at Marseille, Boy Bito at Nice. US has, doesn't have players quite at size that caliber. Obviously, Alistair Johnson for Canada, also at Celtic. It's that depth. Options, I think, past those big names where you kind of look at some of the names in the Canada midfield and fullback, and it's not quite there. But because of the strength of these stars, and especially Buchanan, who was a big prospect a few years ago, and then kind of has faded out in recent years. He was at Inter, now he's at Villarreal. If he can make the leap, I think it's really just, it's neck and neck. You're splitting hairs, and it's not like the goalkeeper's making the difference either. I would say they're picking from a very similar pool of players. I like Jesse Marsch. I'm one of the only people who likes Jesse Marsch. I think everyone hates him, and he kind of does that to himself a little bit. He's a very good coach. Ideally, so is Mauricio Pochettino. I'm going to actually pass. I'm going to say it's really and truly comparable, and on their day, I really think there's nothing picking out these sides between each other. It's either both of these teams have stars who can create individual moments. In my opinion, Jonathan David, without a shadow of a doubt, the best striker in North America.
I agree. I think Pochettino is obviously a better coach than Jesse Marsch, without being rude to Jesse Marsch. He's just managed way better teams and way better players and got that experience. But I think the way with the youth and the kind of the pace that these Canadian forwards have suits how Jesse Marsch wants to play, is what he tried to implement at Leeds. Didn't really work out too well, but he seems to have a good thing going at the moment, and they all seem to be locked into how he's playing. The US has obviously been a bit more turbulent with off the field stuff, but yeah, I think come the World Cup, I don't think controversial, obviously, but I don't think either team's going to be winning it, but there might be a little internal competition between the host nations for sure.
Who do you think's more likely to make a quarterfinal at the World Cup?
I mean, more of the game's going to be on US soil, so you'd go with them. It all depends on the groups, of course, and that round of 16. But I just think the US might do it. I think if they can get everyone fit and have that depth, especially after a long season, having that depth is so key. And if Canada don't have those options to come off the bench that are going to, inspire a victory or a big moment, then that's going to be really difficult. It's not all about the starting 11; it's about the depth nowadays.
Yeah. And last question, to strip then context to make it an even playing field. Let's say both teams are home in the World Cup. So Canada's playing in Canada, the US are playing in the US. Round of 16 game against a powerhouse. Let's say France. Let's say Spain. Which side is more likely to spring the upset?
Well, I don't think either, first of all, without being too negative. But I'd still say US. I just think they'll have... I just feel like they're going to have a moment in this World Cup, whether it's group stage. I think they will get out of the group stage. I feel like this might be the time where they record like a massive round of 16 win. France and Spain may be a little bit of a push, but maybe that kind of mid-tier but still exciting nation like a Switzerland or something, it could be a big one. Need payback the US for that 4-0 drumming against Switzerland. So
Yes, they do. Hello, and welcome back to the All Out Soccer podcast. We're going to be doing a little interview today after our normal weekly recording where we recapped the week in MLS action. Obviously, big news today in the U.S. men's national team front with Mauricio Pochettino's roster announcement for the fall friendlies coming up. We have a player with us who has been part of these rosters many times, Jay DeMerit. Jay, how are you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me, Jeremy. Stoked to be on.
Yeah, Jay, great to speak with you. We're going to be talking with Jay a little bit about the U.S. men's national team, but we're also going to be talking about an exciting new product he's been working on recently called RiseXShine. Jay, I know a little bit about the product because I've been reading about it, but I don't want to put words in your mouth. So if you can kind of summarize the nuts and bolts of RXS, the product, and what you're hoping to achieve with this.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a long time coming. And I think, one of the things that we are is a new way to look at social engagement. Essentially what we're trying to do, we're an app. And we're going to be putting out to the world as a holistic new version of a social story. And so what we're trying to do is take the already existing problems. Right now, and again, this is why EA has not only just been our founding partner, but our founding investor in the project, is because they see the data around this whole idea of what is social now. And what we've really moved from is this idea of social credit, likes, followers, things like this, that, how many subscriptions do you have? These things that really have now become superficial. They're becoming that first layer of social popularity or social engagement where, what they've really seen in their numbers and what we're moving to, and this is what we're doing, is turning social credit into is what we call now social equity. And that's what can you prove online? How can you live more authentic in your version of the story? And so what we've done is we've created a content engine that has 3 layers. Your traditional YouTubes, your traditional Snapchats, TikToks, it's generally just a content engine where you watch content. You can leave comments, you can engage with it very, again, lightly. And so, but that's about all you get from social engagement. And then with that likes and followers things, we're creating a false sense of identity. We're doing things for other people. We've really become this shifting that way and then trying to figure out why we're not feeling very well internally. And so what we've done is really created the opposite. And so we're built around the brain. And so your profile is now going to be your brain split into the 10 forms of intelligence. And then so now that's the dashboard of behaviors, an introspective look of self-awareness, authenticity, these things that really we want to use socially and live in a scalable version of technology. And so that's now the core behavior. It's your brain, not your face. We're taking away a lot of these toxic things from image. And then the last piece of what we're trying to do is we're adding in two layers now. So you're not just watching content. And content comes from a masterclass type of model. I don't know if you're familiar with masterclass. It's where the pros in each field become the coaches or the educators. And so Serena Williams might teach you a lesson on tennis, or Steph Curry will teach a free throw and how you shoot a basketball. So the masters of these classes, from chefs to designers to athletes, are all teaching in a different way, but it's an online tutorial that's quite expensive. Again, it's just that content engine one way. You watch Serena and that's it. What we've added is 2 more layers, and that's engagement. And so once you watch these episodes, which are all short form, anywhere from 30 seconds to 3-4 minutes long, and then now you can move into engagement layer. So that's the second layer now. Engagement is quizzes. It's check in at a venue or a game that you can go to. It's you take a quiz of knowledge to say, do you remember the 10 things that we just quizzed you for from your soccer club or whatever that is? But then you also add photos and videos. And so if somebody challenges you to do a free kick or make a smoothie from a nutritionist, you can now set up your camera just like we did for Facebook challenges and things throughout COVID, where that now becomes that interactive layer. So you're not just watching, now you're interacting. And then that interaction layer creates the gamification of scoring points every time you're interacting. Everyone knows in the future of media, it's a lot of this digital engagement. It's a lot of gamification. And so that opens up that secondary layer to score points. And then the last layer is reward. And so once you've scored those points, now you can cash them out on things like, again, with a soccer reference, a 25% off coupon for your club shop, or a ticket to a game, or meeting the captain after the game because you've learned about the captain's message for game day talks. So you're taking this idea of content, but now you're adding these 2 layers to it. And so essentially we're a tech company and we've created a 3-layered approach to engagement. And then now it's up to the consumers to say, well, what do you want to engage in? Is it just self-awareness and self-knowledge? Great. Is it because you want the new code from EA for EAFC and you want to get a new jersey? Cool. That's a reward entry. Or is it because you actually want to retain information? And that's education. It's things that you could learn through your youth program. So essentially we're creating the engine. It's a 3-layered approach to a new social engagement.
I think that's really great. And I think part of it, for better or worse, all of us, almost every age demographic now, kind of fall in short form engagement platform, cycle where, whether you like it or not, everyone kind of has this appetite for short form engagement, and it's fine. I think just we societally need to accept that that's where things are headed because of everyone has been using these traditional social media apps for so long. Of course, it's now seeped into our brains, and this is how we just kind of like to process information. With that being said, you've talked about some of the ways this can be implemented, some of the ways young people, particular, or anyone can learn and grow as just a person, as an athlete, or whatever it is on these platforms. Can you talk about particularly how it might be useful? Let's say you are a 18, 19-year-old looking to break through professionally right now. How could it be something that could be used by a young athlete, kind of looking to not only learn skills but kind of translate them, learn, and apply them to a professional sense?
I love it. And again, this is, the idea is to be a social program. Anyone can use this. It's not just for athletes. It's other people that want to look at designers or chefs or whatever. But in an athlete's perspective, and this is a good kind of user experience. And so essentially I'm a 19-year-old soccer player. I love the ecosystem of soccer. I'm at the end of my rope right now because 5% get college scholarships and 1% get to make it pro, right? And so essentially what I want to do is stay in love with the game. If I can make that pro, cool, great. I get to be that one. But in the meantime, there's a whole soccer ecosystem about education and understanding the culture of the game. And so what we're doing in one of our launch campaigns is called The Beautiful Game. And it's all around soccer, because that's where I come from. And so a lot of the content we've shot and other things are built into The Beautiful Game. Now, I'll give you an example. And so what we've done is we shot with LAFC a couple weeks ago. John Thorrington, GM, Steve Trundle, I played with both of these guys. And so Steve's the head coach. He wins an MLS Cup on his first season. John Thorrington, GM, wins MLS Cups. But yet each of those roles from head coach to GM have different responsibilities, right? But if I'm a 19-year-old player and all I know is how a sick goal that Messi scored, and that's the education I'm getting from the game because my youth programs aren't providing me a holistic education. And if they are, then they're not providing me the depth level of the game. What does a GM do? If you ask some 19-year-old, like, hey, what does John Thorrington do? Give me the top 5 things that guy does on a day-to-day basis. They'll look at you like you're from Mars. Like, what do you mean? I don't know. I'm supposed to learn how to kick a ball. And that's what I got through my 19 years of education. And so what we're trying to do is give you a 19-year-old, and again, 14, 13 is where we start, a more holistic picture of the game. And so when that exit program happens, because 95% got to exit and 99% are going to have to exit at some point, now we help give them a better version of the story to exit properly into being a GM, maybe a marketing director from said club, maybe move into the coaching courses that you can add through the app that's going to allow you to be the next Steve Trundle from a coaching perspective. And so what we're trying to do from the beginning is provide a more holistic education within the culture of things, from sports to arts to nutrition to whatever it is. It doesn't matter, because again, we're building a whole ecosystem at RiseXShine. But in the soccer example, you can now learn a little bit more about the ecosystem of soccer through GMs, head coaches, nutritionists, fitness experts, marketing directors, players, and fans. All of us create the culture of the game. Again, the culture of the game very well, Jeremy, but at the end of the day, can we do a better job as the social platform to educate properly, to do it in a way where it's engaging, to do it in a way where you can win a cool ticket or meet the cool captain or get a cool badge that says, I know coaching education because I took the 5-part module. And that's what I wanted to do from Atlanta FC because they want their fans to be more educated. Again, we don't care. We're the rails of the engagement. We're the rail system. How people and what modules they want to put, from fan engagements to player education to a free kick challenge from Lionel Messi, all of them are relevant to the sport. But yet, if I'm 19 and I'm going to gravitate to something in the game, aren't we as the platform more responsible to give them that holistic experience to fall into a net of safety instead of falling on the face, which is what 99% actually have to do? And I've seen it for 25 years being in the game, leading as captain through Watford and at Whitecaps. Like, I've seen it so many times, but yet I always wanted to do something about it and create more of a version of the story where the kids can leave. And again, this is just one little example, but they can leave with an opportunity to do something within the game that actually they've now learned about and been able to retain because they learned about the agent, they learned about the nutritionist, they took the challenge to do the sprint competition, and they did something else because now they want to be a GM, because now there's way more choice than to be that one that's going to be the next Messi. Like, we got to give them a better opportunity to land on their feet.
I completely agree. And it sounds like a really exciting opportunity for people, just where it seems like now, if you have any interest in exploring anything outside of playing, you have to do the work yourself to find what is the pathway to get into scouting, what is the pathway to get into nutrition. It all comes from you. You're a teenager. You don't really know what you want. You're kind of, you're amorphous, you're loose. And I think to have a platform that kind of presents those different opportunities, and look, not every person's going to do every single thing, but they might be drawn to one in particular, is really exciting. And it consolidates instead of just like this endless sea of, a young person looking for what they should do in life. I'm really interested in the reward model, and I want to hear a little more about it. So I wish when I was a young person, I got more into video scouting. I think that would have been an amazing career arc for me. You know what? I'm very happy where I am right now. But just from the technical side, I think it would have been really, really cool to learn, because my playing career ended, unfortunately, when I was in high school. But I think that would have been a logical pivot for me. Let's say I had a keen interest in this, or coaching in general. How could I have used the app at that age to kind of parlay my just interest in that and interest in the game as a whole, with the knowledge of how to play, formations, positions, whatever, and translate that into a learning experience, and then also the reward model that you've mentioned? Yes,
absolutely. No, great question. So again, just on video analysis alone, you could think about, okay, first you got to get the celebrity, or you got to get the blue check mark, or what we like to call the Chrome environment. That's the masterclass model. Who's going to Coach Johnson at, has 2 degrees in coaching and is now playing or coaching some high school, now has way less relevancy than Steph Curry, who can teach you how to play basketball. Again, different diplomas, but if I'm 16 and I'm listening to Steph way more, and I'm opening my ears to that blue check mark than I am to, no disrespect to Mr. Johnson, that. And so the idea is the teachers now need to become who we follow already. Right. But now, if you want to learn about video analysis, because that becomes now part of the scouting and part of the beautiful game system we've created. So we just keep adding content to our beautiful game modules. Right. So in this context, again, you go, okay, well, I'm interested in video analysis. So you type it in and you go video. And so like, okay, now we're going to go behind the scenes with the head scout and the head video product guy at Man United. That's a 2-minute episode from that person saying, this is what I do for the most elite club on the planet. Episode 2 is, how do I actually do it? And so now you're going to the tech side. I use this product. And maybe now that product now becomes it's some camera that you got to use to analyze. And it gives you a heat map of, how many, what kind of kilometers that person ran, and how much distance covered, and all this kind of stuff from a video analysis perspective. So we get technical. Those brain points are now being in verbal linguistic. They're an interpersonal relationship because you're working with teams. And in the end, you're using a lot of visual spatial intelligence to analyze to use technology to put that now into player development. So now we personify those things. We put those into the curation of the content with that said celebrity that is going to open the ears to begin with, Manchester United, our key job in that field. And then now you're going to engage. And so now you say, if that person's 2 episodes say, this is what it is, I'm from here, what club did I do it for? What did my analysis from that camera I just talked about? What did it give me? What data am I using? So those all now become questions. So now we're into retainment layer. So it's like, hey, goes into a quiz. And it says, when that person said they used this device, what was it? It was a speed tracker, a video camera, or a clipboard. Oh, it's actually the video tracker, because we know that that's what I had to learn. Because I got that right, I just scored points. And now I just got that. No, so now I'm retaining. I'm learning more about that position I'm interested in. And now this reward layer becomes interesting, because this is where 5 kids in England are going to get to come and shadow that person at Man United for a day. 500 people, and I say people, are going to be able to earn a QR code or a Zoom link that allows that person to come enter the room in a semi-scalable way with the professional. And now that person at Man United spends 1 afternoon a month to walk into a meeting room, which he does every day anyway, and takes a half an hour of his or her time to give 500 people a unique experience that they earned the right to be in that room. And then the last piece that's the most scalable is super fun but digital and cheap coupons. And so let's just say that tracker thing that they use is $200 online. Well, maybe we work with that company to give away 10% off coupons for any user that wants to cash their points out on the new device. So that's now a revenue share too for the company that's making the device. But yet I need one of those, and I'm going to save myself $15 because if I learned and I scored these retentive points, now I get to cash them out on products, light work coupons that can be redeemed online. And so again, that transfer of the tiered approach to the rewards becomes relevant to the user, but because we're trying to be the platform, we got to do it for everybody to win. So it's kind of like we like to call the reward platform our digital carnival. You go to the carnival, you're not always getting teddy bear. If you get to be the one that hits the ball 3 times and you get the teddy bear, great. Like, good job. You get that 5 visits to the training ground. Good job. You won the teddy bear. In the middle, you got your cool stuff. And then the end, you got the rubber snake. And you might choose, that's the thing you got away, but you had 6 tickets left and that's what you got. But you still leave with the rubber snake. And you're like, that was fun. I can't wait to come back to this carnival. And so that's kind of the idea from the reward side of what we're trying to do. It's like we're going to have a bunch of rubber snakes with the small digital coupons at 10, 15% off for products and things, or club shops in a soccer reference. And then you got the middle ones, which are like, Zoom calls for 500, 50% off coupons at your club shop that we know that they're not going to make much revenue on that coupon. But at the end of the day, they're offering that to another 1,000 people that are going to get a good deal on their new jersey. Cool. But then you got these one-of-ones, like meeting a captain, going and shadowing someone at work, getting on these, what unique one-of-one materialistic things, but still like something I at 19 would really love if I lived in Manchester. You know what I mean? And if I love video analysis. So now I'm cashing out things that are relevant to my journey, and I am more likely to keep coming back to that environment because it's healthy for me. I'm gaining knowledge and I'm getting cool rewards that regardless of whether I win, lose, or draw, I'm getting 15% off that cool product I want because I just learned that even more that I want to be a videographer and a video analysis expert because I've been able to divulge into that environment and actually learn and know that this is attached to me. I like this now. I'm now going to create a better and more passionate, purposeful pathway for myself because I know that my career is over. Do you know what I mean? And so this is where the pathway becomes clear and we can help be that pathway provider.
Yeah, and that's really exciting because as a young person, it can be so challenging to kind of step into these opportunities. They're just rigid application processes and you're, sending things into the nether, and to have an alternate way of kind of stepping in and kind of gaining this sort of knowledge and perspective, especially by using what's like kind of in a form that's adjacent to social media, would be so much more rewarding and just enjoyable. And also a social media platform where you're building towards something, where so much of it right now it's kind of all into the void and you're on it and then you're off it and then it goes nowhere. I wanted to transition the conversation into kind of talking about the current social environment we live in now, where these sort of short form engagement baiting strategies are really rewarded, particularly in the context of the US men's national team right now. I'm not asking to throw anyone under the bus, but obviously there's been a lot of chatter recently between ex-players commenting on current players and current players commenting on ex-players. My take is that everyone's kind of in the wrong here. It's just noise into the void, and it's unproductive from all ends, and it just is what it is. How, when you see stuff like that, as now as an ex-player and now as, you know, a developer, how does it make you feel? Is the kind of this sort of engagement, the stuff, or this sort of media that exists right now that, you know, a lot of young people are consuming, a lot of young soccer fans in particular? If I was a young soccer fan, this would be all I'm seeing on my feed. How does this make you feel? Is this kind of what kind of pushed you into this new sort of product? Does it make you frustrated when you see all these conversations like this that are kind of just people yelling at each other online just for the sake of engagement and whatever? How do you respond to all of this?
I mean, I think it's a really good question, and I think, you know, for me, these opinions are generally subjective based on the powers that be of how we got there. You know, so again, from my story, you know, I had to do it the hard way. I had to take every absolute inch that I got in my journey to get there. So I never would have taken that extra opportunity for granted or said no to a national team call-up. But that's just my story. I didn't grow up in the system like Christian Pulisic did. I don't see the lens that he sees it through. But if I look at through his lens, or I try to put myself into his perspective, and I played 50 plus games, I'm carrying injuries, my leadership is something that I am now starting to question because I'm not feeling the greatest, to come in mentally to be able to lead, because I'm a leader. That's his role in the team. He knows he's going to have to step into that captaincy type of thing, whether he's wearing the armband or not. He's one of the leaders of that group. And so I know in leadership, you know, being a captain of Watford as well as the Whitecaps, you have to be fit to lead if you are considered a leader. And if your play itself can't quite get there, that second leadership bubble actually becomes really difficult, and it actually becomes risky to be able to come in there. What if I come in and I actually play like crap and I'm trying to lead and no one wants to listen to me? And all of a sudden I'm moving into a World Cup year and my leadership is now tainted, or it's not what it used to be before I got in here because I didn't mentally feel like I'm ready. I can see that perspective, but I can also look at the point of, like, you know, I know what it takes to get to the national team. I know it's a privilege, and anytime you should come in, you should come in. I get that too. But again, I didn't play 55 games a season. I used to play 45 games a season. And that 10 games, in my opinion, do make a big difference, especially as you lead up to the big tournament. And that is the World Cup. That, from a longer term distance, is the priority. And I think that that's kind of what he's prioritizing, is that, okay, I'm not going to be ready this summer. I'm going to be ready next. And so that's now back to the subjective conversation of knowing yourself, which actually is a good segue into what we're trying to do with the app. And that's, imagine if you created a social platform where you got to know yourself as the core. You got to continue to self-diagnose, to be self-aware, to understand where your skill sets live, to understand where your energy might live, because you're learning how to use these skills, or learning more about self-awareness, about whether you should monitor these things properly. Are you mentally burned out? Are you learning enough about other things outside of the position? Are you doing things within the app that is going to help you be better at mental performance, better at free kicks, better at fitness? We can build all those things into the curriculums or the app itself socially. And so on a long-winded question, we want to be a source of that later in time, where we can actually be more self-monitoring so we can make the right decisions for ourselves. And I watched this thing on Christian the other day, and again, he wasn't the only one. There was lots of guys that took the summer off. But again, I know that was with a light to come into these next 8 to 10 months and go, all right, it's time to put our big boy hats on and let's go play. And we're going to be ready for it, both mentally and physically, because we took that mental break. That's the bet. And again, I hope we've educated these guys enough to know that they can bet on themselves first. And that's the big belief that I try to continue to have in a positive note, partly because I'm a positive guy. And I want to make sure that those guys did those things for the right reasons. It's not because they wanted to go to Marbella for a couple of weeks. And again, that's what the haters are going to say. But again, if that's what they need to make sure that they're firing on all 10 cylinders next summer in July, cool, good job. I hope you had a nice summer off, because next summer is going to be disciplined to play. And I hope that that's going to happen, because again, I'm a fan first. I've played for that team. I know what it means. And so especially to be able to perform on our home turf is equally important to the growth of the game, which all players need to represent when you play for our national team. That's the core of why we do it. But it becomes really important to making sure we deliver when it matters. And that's what our team did in 2009 and 2010. We delivered when it mattered. we won World Cup groups. We got to a world final, snapping Spain's win streak, getting, almost beating Brazil in the final. Like, that's the kind of stuff that results can always say, what do you mean? We had the result. We did what we needed to do as a national team. And I think that's the goal for all these guys. But now they got to go do it, because they're taking risks on making sure that actually goes well. But it's a risk, because if you're not there, you're giving fuel to the fire to the people on the street or in the couch going, you didn't even show up last year. How are we going to win? But again, that's the bet on themselves. And I just hope that they're right.
The roster that came out today was particularly MLS heavy, and some of those big names that were absent this summer were also absent in this recent call-up window. Do you think news like that and players seeing rosters like that is detrimental to, or detrimental being a subjective word here, how do you think that impacts where younger players choose to play going forward? Does that disincentivize them perhaps to make the step to Europe at a young age, if they see that they're getting similar opportunities in the national team from staying at home?
Again, I think either way, you got to play well for your club team, and you have to be in involvement, and you have to play, and you have to be in that leadership role to even get considered to the national team. So that's always step one, as far as I'm concerned, as far as what players should look at. Like, if I'm happy to stay at Atlanta United and get a good year this year, because I know I'm number one center back, I know that team's revolving around my playing time, rather than going and taking a risk on probably a better contract and a better environment at, Juventus or Villarreal, and going, oh, well, that's a bigger name and a better opportunity. But if I'm going to be the third string center back, that's a risk to my national team. Like, it really is. And because if I'm not playing for my club, I very rarely will come in and start for my national team. It's not really how it works. And so I think that's a subjective conversation to opportunity is the best way I would say that I would look at that from the player journey perspective. But then again, if you can step into those roles and play every week for Villarreal or Juventus, then that's going to definitely prepare you for a World Cup and the standard that needs to be at come June. And so again, it does become a subjective conversation, but it's definitely what players are going to see through in that lens of how to make that decision of whether I stay here, take an MLS contract, or take a bigger one or a bigger opportunity and go into Europe. And I think, again, I look at it, especially moving into a World Cup year, it's what's going to make me the fittest, strongest, and most capable to step in as that 23 when it matters in June. And if that involves me playing every week at Atlanta at a really good MLS standard now, I don't think MLS is at a bad standard anymore. I think it is a good standard to be able to transition into national team play. I do. I think it's much better than it used to be. Even when I was there 10 years ago, it's a very different place.
Pochettino today said, quote, "The MLS, in my assessment, is maybe more competitive than some leagues in Europe." Obviously, that is stripped of a lot of context. He's not talking about the Premier League, but he's talking about maybe some of these fringe leagues, outside of the top five that some players were probably hoping for call-ups didn't get. The MLS is better than it has ever been. I cover the MLS every week, and I think it is, there's obviously some talent discrepancy versus some of the top sides and lower sides. I think the MLS is great for parity more than anything. I think that's what makes it so exciting, kind of like the championship, which you've also played in, where there is a little bit of uncertainty entering each season of who will be the best teams. The only difference is the MLS doesn't have those three teams coming down from the Premier League every season. I wanted to transition to talking about the new USL Division 1, which will offer a tremendous opportunity potentially for new players who are, starting a division below, then to get promoted and then earning top flight contracts. One, how do you think this model could have impacted your career if it was in place all those years ago when you were breaking through? And two, how optimistic are you for its, full immersion into U.S. soccer culture and the ecosystem?
I mean, starting at the top, the hope is big. I just don't know how long it's going to take. And I think, spending most of my career in England in a pro-rel situation, I know that breeds culture. To your point, no season's ever the same. There's always different teams in the league every year. So there's always new away grounds. There's always new, drama to be had, so to speak. But drama is culture, as far as I'm concerned. And culture is football. Like, for real, it goes that deep and it is that wide. And I do think that promotion relegation is what feeds that beast. It feeds the engagement. It feeds that roller coaster that every year it's going to be different. And that then feeds the pressure. And I think that because there isn't much pressure, because who cares if we don't make the playoffs if we're Vancouver? Yeah, you might get a little bit of slack from your fans, but that's it. The league doesn't really care. No one else cares. No other away fans care. And so it's really hard to create culture. And I do believe that that's the only thing that we are starting to. And again, we're gaining in culture. I just don't know what the MLS culture is yet, because we're still from 1974, originally soccer, NASL, moving into the 90s where we actually had a sustainable league. Like, we're so new to this. Like, culture is, I always say this at Watford, you get to wear your badges out. And, when I walked out the Whitecaps, my badge, which is Whitecaps were one of the first original 3 teams in the NASL, and it said 1974. And when I walked them out at Watford in England, it said 1881. And so you're almost 100 years behind in culture. And so that means terraces, pro rels, stories of FA Cup finals, playoff finals, all of these wins, losses, relegations, bankruptcies, all this thing that like all the rest of the cultures have in this world, because they've been there for 100 years. Like, we're still catching up in North America. We still are just getting going where we even can think about promotion relegation, because technically now the USL 1 has sustainable franchises that are averaging 15, 20,000 people that are seeing a gate that's actually sustainable, because 500 people aren't showing up, 5,000 are showing up. And so that now can reflect into, bigger contracts, better sustainability within the community, revenue opportunities for owners. And so this is where I think it can become interesting down the line, where, again, I don't know when that is, maybe 5 years would be my probably earliest, is that if I'm a USL 1 owner and I have the opportunity to eventually go up to an MLS franchise, but yet if I'm an MLS owner and I know that if I still create good culture and I can average the 20,000 in my barn, not much is going to change from my side as the owner. I'm still going to create great revenue through my stadiums. I'm now creating part of a bigger ecosystem, which will have to be, in my opinion, kind of like what they do in the Premier League, where I've been relegated in the Premier League and you get these windfalls for 2 years, where the MLS can still be the big dog and then pay you on the way down, so you don't lose that, you don't fall flat on your face from a revenue perspective. The MLS is still taking care of that, but now you're creating these double revenue opportunities for up and down, and then USL continues to gain in sustainability and revenue and stuff, so the owners aren't like on 2 pages. I think that's the only sustainable way to get to pro rel, but I do think that that's a longer term conversation.
Yes, because obviously you can only imagine how some MLS owners may feel about paying out payments, collectively to teams that aren't even in the division anymore, and that could be a whole mess and another saga. I'm supporting local right now, Brooklyn FC, new team in Brooklyn. Yeah. My local MLS team, NYCFC, are 11 years old, not even, and they're a subsidiary of Manchester City, which I know makes a lot of New Yorkers, particularly ones who aren't Manchester City fans, a little irked and a little like, whoa, should I hop on board to this club that feels local, but it's also part of this behemoth. I think NYCFC's new soccer specific stadium will help a lot. To turn our attention to the MLS right now in 2025, one of the best teams in the Western Conference are your Vancouver Whitecaps, obviously buoyed recently by the transfer of Thomas Muller. Great side without Muller, and now obviously have a chance to take it to the next level. Probably the most exciting player in Vancouver history, just from a international pedigree point of view. What was your reaction initially to the news? And from a cultural point of view, as we were just talking about, what would this mean to Vancouver Whitecap fandom? This is one of the most famous players ever joining the MLS.
Yeah, no, and I was like, finally, is basically was my initial reaction as you asked. We've been waiting 13 years for this. Again, I was the first signing of the franchise. And again, They wouldn't even give me designated player status when I came into the league because I wasn't a popular enough defender. So like, nope, there's no defenders in the league. Like they didn't even have designated players when I came into the league in 2011 as the first club signing. But either way, as I was captain for the first 5 seasons, I'm like, guys, can we bring in like a big player, please? You know what I mean? Like, and it just wasn't part of the Whitecaps' like rev streams and things. We just didn't want to, pay that much up front and all this kind of stuff. But we've been wanting it forever, as if you're a Vancouver fans, because we know that's the only way you win championships in the league. you got to pay for a couple players that are going to be the difference makers. That's what Gareth Bale did in the semifinal to get them into the thing. That's what Josie Altidore and Michael Bradley did for Toronto when they paid him all that big money, because that's what happens when you get these DPs that come in and actually, use that talent when it matters. The Giovincos came, again, just using Toronto as this example. You spend, you win. It's what LAFC did coming into the league. They spend right away. And they get these big stars to come in, and they get them to come to LA because that's a good market for them. And then they win championships in their first or second seasons. And so it's no secret you need DPs to win. And I think the Whitecaps, we've gotten to the playoffs a few times. We've kind of set this ceiling, and now all of a sudden you finally find the right player who looks passionate to be here, who looks like he can bring something from a leadership perspective that maybe we've lacked from a depth perspective. And then you've given help to a guy like Brian White, who's been doing it all on his own for the last couple of years, outside of Ryan Gauld, who's not even been in the lineup because he's been injured. Wait till he comes back.
Yeah.
I think the fans are really genuinely excited for the first time because we can see the depth chart necessary to win. And so I do see that as an exciting thing for Vancouver. I've never seen it buzz so much about the game. I was at the game the other day when Muller had his debut, and my son said, the only thing I need is a Thomas Muller jersey. Make sure you get it. He's never done that before. So but that's culture, going back full circle. That's what it's about. And that's how you grow culture, especially in this ecosystem. You need those big players. You need guys that know what it's like to win a World Cup, because that's what these guys have actually done. And I think that's the best part of where we're at in Vancouver. And so it's excited to be excited again.
It creates, when you talk about history, it will create 20, 30 years down the line. It's like, oh, remember those 2 years Thomas Muller came in and he teamed up with this already really exciting team and kind of took them from very good to elite. And it'll be that little pocket of history that everyone will be like, oh, remember in 2025 when this happened, and it'll be just forever etched in kind of the history of the franchise. And yeah, I think it's going to be really exciting to see how that it plays out the rest of the season. I think it's one of the most interesting MLS campaigns I can remember in a while, just because Messi still is here. We have all these new DPs that have come into the league who are really, really fascinating. And then there's just like Philadelphia, who are just like really, really good. So I think there's just really an interesting collection of contenders this year, kind of from all parts of the leaned all into the DP wagon, and some that have just like that one big DP, and some that are just like really, really good teams made up of a collection of good players and, have elite coaches behind them. Just to finish up, is we've run really long and turn our attention back to Rise and Shine. Thinking about soccer as a whole, you guys have EA obviously on board with you. Why do you think EA jumped into the project with you so early and has backed you?
Well, first off, I think, they see the problems as much as anyone else does, as far as, data, when it comes to social programming. And I think all of us want to do better. Everyone wants to help the social dilemma. And that is at the core of it all, mental health and mental wellness. And I think when we kind of presented to them to say, hey, not only is this mental wellness at the center of this awareness and this behavior behind your own intelligence and your own brain split into the 10 forms, now they have the best gamification engines on the planet. And so they said, okay, well, can we now help you guys create more of a gamification engine that we know is working from our years and years and years of data and becoming the biggest one of the biggest tech companies in the world? And then we can help. And so they saw the wellness, and then they saw we can help. And then now it's up to us to create this cool reward layer where we're now the effort to come into something new, to create a new behavior around self or behind a new social engagement. Again, we know what we're up against. We know that TikTok and Instagram and Snapchat are the juggernauts of this industry. And we're not here to disrupt them totally. We're here to complement them. And we're here to say, hey, you can post your cool dance competition over here too on Rise and Shine, or we can create it here and then post it onto your TikTok. So we want to be that complementary media. Yes, we're here to disrupt, but doing it in a positive way, because what we have on our wall, number one, is everybody wins in our system. Whether you're a brand that wants to sell a product and make the engagement deeper on your advertising, yeah, we can be that for you. If you're a youth program director and you want holistic education through the devices to help your athletes be better at nutrition, mental performance, and other parts of the game, we can do that for you. If you're just a regular human at 28 years old that wants to learn about themselves and become more self-aware and gain a better mental wellness or a better mental health because you're gaining skills, you're gaining knowledge, you're earning cool prizes along the way, you're getting to meet your heroes, and you're retaining a lot more information, because we all know knowledge is power. We can do that for you too. And so the idea is everyone wins in our system. That's our goal moving forward. We have our Founders Club, which is our pre-sale coming up in the next 2 to 3 weeks, where we can start to get people in. We can start to understand the data. We can start to understand what people really want, and then we can continue to use that data for the goodness of our community. And that's really what we want to do. We want to be this social source of connection, not the other way around, where it's superficial, better mental health on the way in than on the way out. Like, the order is completely wrong. And so we really want to hit the market running while saying, no, we are here as a safe place. We are here as a connecting place, and it's better for you because you are at the center of all of it. And so that's really the big risk, because we know what we're in for, but it's also a huge reward if we can break through that wall, because we believe that most people see the problems. We believe that most people do not feel better on the way out. They feel worse. And we want to be the change to that, but we got to show you. And we're tired of telling you. We want to show you. So that's coming soon over the next couple of weeks. And we'll get people through the door and start showing them the other way.
Yeah, great. I appreciate it. And can you talk about some of the next steps for the project and how people can look to sign up and get involved?
Yeah, so we're heading to London in the next couple of weeks to finalize with a couple clubs to be named. Watford, of course, being one of them, my ex-club. But there's a couple Premier League teams very interested in what we're doing, some content realms of what we're going to shoot to add to that beautiful game campaign, which again is our launch campaign. It's all around soccer. We're actually locally, both in North America, we're actually doing a combine, NFL style combine for teenage soccer players that are going to be, but it's all built around that holistic wellness of the 10 forms of intelligence. And so we're going to have stations like press conference stations doing verbal linguistic, and then a nutrition station learning about nutrition and wellness. And then we'll do a sprint station where we do speed and we talk about wellness and performance. And so basically we're creating this NFL combine style to complete the complete player. Yes. And so that's another organic growth thing that we'll be doing in the fall. Working with universities like Illinois, Chicago, where I went to school, to do our Chicago stop. And then we also can stay above that realm of youth sports, because we know that they're quite protective. So instead of saying, hey, club, can you help us run this event? And then they're like, yeah, but these clubs can't come because that's not part of our community. So we're doing it through the universities, because now all kids can come. And it's going to be, again, to young adults. That's mainly our target market. But then moving into our full human development, we want to be for everybody. And so we'll make sure we're doing that. But we know that if we nail soccer in that ecosystem, we tell stories around, again, John Thorrington and coaches and players and nutritionists. Now we can start to create this holistic picture and then keep adding and adding and adding. And so that's our goal. We know we can't be everything all at once, but we can start with the things we know. And that's people want a better, version of the story online, and they want to be able to engage and earn and do all the things that we've kind of presented to online programs. But now we can do it at the center of you as the driver. We have an opportunity to really change community for the better, and that's our goal.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I think a lot of social media is kind of intentioned at wasting your time these days, as opposed to taking advantage of it. And I think to kind of feel some sense of agency while you're on it would be really, really rewarding. So I really, really commend the work you're doing. I think I wish this was around when I was a young adult, but I'm a product of the apps that I consumed. We all were to some extent. Jay, I really appreciate you giving us your time. And if you have any closing thoughts, the floor is yours. But once again, thanks for joining.
No, all good. And again, thank you for the opportunity to share the stories and share our journey. We know it's just beginning, but it takes coming on to interviews like this that really care about the messaging we're trying to create, both through social, but also as a soccer fan. As someone that understands the game like you do, Jeremy, it's important for us to provide a platform, but also a place for you to earn, a place for you to learn more about the game and all these other things. Like, that's what the best thing about community is, that we're really doing that and really want to create the right partnerships, create the right people coming through to engage in this system, because again, it's where everybody wins. And we're really excited to continue to do that. Again, the pre-launch will be coming soon. So we are RXS app in Instagram, and we're RiseXShine.com on our website. So keep in touch with all of those two things as far as how we're going to create our messaging, promote those messages, and get people in the app, because again, it's for all of us. And we're really looking forward to showing people what it's about and making sure that they feel good on the way out.
Great. Sounds good, Jay. And can I just badge you for an MLS champion prediction?
Ooh, well, I'll stay local. I'll stick with my Ryan Gull gets back by the end of the season. He adds to the already existing trifecta. Muller scores in the final, and Vancouver finally gets the championship we've been looking for. So I'll stay local.
Sounds like a perfect storybook ending. All right, Jay, thank you for your time, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Jeremy.
That just about wraps it up for this week's All Out Soccer. He's been Joe McBride. I've been Jeremy Goldstein. I hope you can join us on the next episode of All Out Soccer, or as Thomas Muller would say, Auf Wiedersehen.